Mr. Paulsen, I assume. How are you, my friend?
You know, man, like I said backstage, I'm breathing and I'm not in jail, but the day ain't over yet. I'll take it. Right now, we're in good shape.
You know, in essence, the Olivier of voices get
I
throat
am
cancer.
the living example of we make plans and God laughs. Or your pal Julia Sweeney did a show years ago called God Said Ha, right? And look, man, I was told right at the beginning, here's the deal.
Rob is coming back off for the
Oh, yes.
folks.
I had stage 3 throat cancer. Thank you. 3 years ago at this time. And going through my life, doing my gig, ain't nothing wrong. It was great. And I feel a lump in my neck, and one thing led to another, and it was stage 3 throat cancer. But what I was told at the beginning was, here's the deal, we're virtually sure we can cure you, but before we do, we almost have to kill you. It's a gnarly treatment for obvious reasons. But as a result of incredible support from my wife, my son, my daughter-in-law, the usual suspects in the sickness and health vibe, you know, and world-class health treatment, health care, I'm good, and I'm able to do my gig again, and I've been left with, as Dr. Drew said when I was chatting with him a couple weeks, I gotta stop dropping names, Bob De Niro told me that. By the way, that was a Dave Coulier joke, just so you know. But Dr.
A backup name drop.
Yeah, thank you very much. A reverse backup name drop, yeah. But Dr. Drew said, so you actually had the gift of cancer. And I know what he's talking about, because in my world now, I have a sense of empathy, Dennis, that I never would have had were it not for this experience. So
Were you
now,
a brusque individual before this?
No, I don't think so. I think I've always been a fairly happy guy. I mean, I make my living doing this, for God's sake, and then you start doing that. It's pretty wild, and with no chemical inducement that we, well, wait a minute, that we know
It leads
of.
you to a happy life,
Yes.
that sort of playfulness.
It
But
totally
I'm saying,
is.
you're 3 years out from stage 3 throat cancer. If this isn't a time in your life to get existential,
You can't figure it out.
you know, or empathetic.
That's right, dude. You are never going to get it.
The point.
Yeah.
And I can tell you haven't missed the point.
I haven't, and
it's like
I'm
a
grateful.
12-step program that you're in a way. You know how they always have to pay it forward, and they talk about healing from outside in.
Precisely. And it's not something that we haven't heard a zillion times before, but this is my chance to get these glorious opportunities that you and Mr. King have provided to chat about this way in which my gig has not only helped me, but the book, Voice Lessons, is about really the extent to which these characters have paid their joy and love forward to me. Because long before I was diagnosed, I had the great good fortune of spending countless hours, and not just me, we all do it, talking to kids on the phone, often their parents, and often these parents know that their kid's not going to make it. They know their child's not going to make it out of the hospital in the way in which they'd prefer. And all they want to talk is speak to Raphael or Pinky or whatever. And then the parents keep in touch with me, Dennis. And 10 years, 12 years later say, hey, we heard about your struggle. We just want you to know how much your phone call meant to Chad. He's been gone now for 15 years, but here's unbelievable stuff that I and my family and my sweet son never had to go through. But it turns out these characters, it's even happened here today, walked in and I meet our pal Sayer. And I say, hey, I understand you like Animaniacs. And he does that. It's fantastic.
What a gift.
Can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
Incredible.
When you were younger, did you want to be the voice that was eventually done by others, or did you always kind of like the sidecar right off the shoulder of the character? What brought you to it, I guess?
Well, actually, great question. And the fact is that I came out here ostensibly, like most of us, years ago from Detroit, from Flint actually, to make my living doing traditional on-camera stuff. I was a singer first, and I was doing that gig.
From Detroit?
From Detroit.
You weren't doing MC5 in the
No, and
voices
Rob Tyner, now you're Alice Cooper. Boy, don't even get me started,
Up against the wall!
Yeah. Kick out the jams! Beep! Yeah, no, all those guys, man. Bob Seger. But I was a rock and roll guy who came out here to do music and TV, and I was. But the first thing you know, you realize you did stand up forever. All you guys get pilot deals, or you guys get to go and read for pilots. The first thing you recognize is that everybody in the room could be related. We all look the same. And we're understandably pigeonholed by how we look. Man, when I started doing cartoons, in those days it was G.I. Joe and Transformers, and I walk into a room with all these incredibly good actors, many of whom I recognized from television growing up.
All right.
And nobody cares what we look like. And I thought, now you're talking, man. I get hired to do things that I would never be considered for on camera. So thankfully, my wife was much brighter, still is, than I.
A Detroit girl, too? Or
No,
you met her out
from
here?
Shelby, North Carolina. And there's a difference. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
It's different from being up in Motown and down in Shelby. We ain't going to start talking about that. But she said, honey, no offense. It's not that I think you're tough to look at, but you're getting a lot of work with your voice. And by the way, we have a baby coming, so maybe you ought to do the gig that's going to put the dough in your pocket. Boy, was she right. Because now still, at 97, I still don't have to care what I look like.
Yeah.
It's the greatest gig. We're back doing Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain again for Hulu with the King of Hollywood. Anytime Mr. Spielberg says, hey, do you think you want it? Yes. And this is after the throat cancer thing. So the fact is that from every angle, I have countless stuff about which to be grateful. And I think an even more important story that might help.
I see, I guess early on, the Ninja Turtles must be a big break, right?
Oh, man. Well, totally.
What are they at the point I don't think they're quite the Ninja Turtles yet at that moment.
No,
are they?
in fact, I was there literally from a clean sheet of paper. And can you imagine that pitch? Can you imagine? Okay, here's the deal. Now, I just want to get your attention. We've got these 4 turtles that drink this goo, and they turn into ninjas next. And I don't know who passed on it, but somebody bit, and nobody had an idea that it would end up being what it is. But the thing I like about that project in particular is it is utterly a bulletproof franchise. But now we see it 2 and 3 generations later. I love seeing the artists who are inspired by something like that in their childhood, and they take all these different takes on something that has really held up generation after generation after generation. But certainly, if that show kind of changed my career, because you know how it goes. If you get a hit, all of a sudden you're not necessarily any better, you're just on a hit. So people say, well, let's bring him in, he must be good. And so it changed my gig in that respect. But if that show changed my career, then Animaniacs changed my life, because it was Steven Spielberg, 40-piece orchestra. I got to sing in every episode. It was that circumstance where luck is when opportunity meets preparation. It's one of those where I said, oh, this is the high heat. This is it.
Yeah, you were on your game, too, just when that door
Dennis?
opened, you hit the ball hard.
Yes, it was just the only time in my career where I've ever walked up to producers and said, with utter confidence, maybe chutzpah, but not arrogance, if you don't hire me for this, you're making a mistake. And I was right. It really did make a difference. And the thing I like about both shows in different aspects is Ninja Turtles is fantastic. You're talking. I got to be Raphael in the original show and Donatello on a iteration 25 years later. So you're looking at 50% of the turtles and one old guy from Livonia, Michigan.
Right.
But as much as I appreciate that, Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain are being rebooted as a result of the art for the sake of the art. Turtles, man, $6 billion in merchandise. I mean, it takes you 4 years to make that kind of money. Come on, the guy's got to eat, right?
That was before they knocked me down to 29 hours a week, so I did invest in the dental. Are you going to go back and direct? I'm always intrigued when I hear director in an animation project.
Yeah.
Tell me how that.
Right.
I think director. That task to me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. When I'm directing the most recent iteration of Ninja Turtles called Rise of the TMNT at Nickelodeon, but I'm the voice director, and frankly, by the time I get in, they've done such great casting that I just ask the actors a little slower, a little faster. You guys got any ideas? I think they hire me essentially to go, who else has more turtle DNA in Hollywood than Rob Paulsen? So I know how to talk to these, a lot of times on-camera folks who don't quite get that the voice gig is a little different. Acting is acting, but you don't have the camera here to get a response by raising your eyebrow. Yeah. So it's a little different. A lot of improv. Improv is a big skill in this gig. But the real direction, I think, and this is not taking away anything from the great voice directors, Andrea Romano won 9 Emmys directing Batman and Animaniacs and Freakazoid and all that stuff. and she's really the tip top. In my case, it's more about helping the actors find what they're already good at.
That sounds Belichickian. I always
yeah, Belichick, right?
Because he's,
hey man,
what do our players do
that's
the best?
Right.
Let's
Tom Brady, he was what?
Let's
okay, let's see what we got. We'll figure it out. And so I think that's where I was brought in. But hey man, these folks who direct animation and direct the shots and essentially act with their pencils and their computers, man, I don't draw them and I don't write them.
When you meet young guys now and young gals who are doing these voices, do you see a bit of your young self in them?
I do, and it's really kind of sweet because they often say, Mr. Paulsen, right away you know you're in trouble when they say, Mr. Paulsen, I want to tell you, God, am I that old?
Call me Robert.
That's right. It's really become kind of a cool legacy.
Yeah,
it's really, and now we're running into people who say, I just want to do voice work, man. When I was a kid and got here, the cartoons were pretty much relegated to Saturday morning, as you can imagine. Now, cartoons are so ubiquitous and video games, and God, the folks who do video games are rock stars, man. So people say...
It's a 24/7, 365 venture now.
Totally.
Whereas you're right, we had 3 hours on Saturday.
We had this gap, and now it's Disney. Disney Plus is out now. I did all the Disney afternoon stuff, Goof Troop, Gummy Bears, all these crazy Disney shows, Darkwing Duck, and now they're all back 24/7 on the Disney Plus thing. It's and proprietary stuff for the new platforms, Hulu, Netflix, Amazon, all proprietary shows as well.
Never miss a beat. Subscribe to Larry King now and watch new episodes every day.